excited we're finally starting. I'd like to welcome everybody. I'm so glad you guys are here this evening at the Obs Academy of Inspiration. Okay, my name is Zime Keswa, for those of you who don't know, and we have two of our professors here with us today. The first is Valerie Geselev, who I'm sure all of you know, lovely person, and she's also one of the principals of the Obs Academy with me. Today's topic is going to be who needs curatorship and does it fit into art? And she herself has been studying at UCT curatorship, so she has an academic background on curatorship and art. Our second professor of the evening is a wonderful gentleman named Khayalethu Witbooi, who is a visual artist at Great Moore Studios. He's a resident there, and he doesn't have a huge academic background on art, but he has proven that you don't really need that, and all things are possible through, of course, inspiration. Okay, we'll get started. Okay, I'd like to welcome you first of all, our professors for this evening. Are you guys well? Yes. You don't feel comfortable with that?
Well, trying to run away from titles and stuff. Just
Kaya, okay. We'll start with you, Valerie. Okay, the point of this evening, on every evening that we have here on Wednesdays, is to get everybody to engage and give their opinions on what they think.
We either at soccer or Mark Fransman, right? Mark Fransman is the Tagores, soccer is the Scrubbies.
Thank you. Well, then we know what we're doing later. The understanding of curatorship. A curator is somebody who is a manager, overseer of art, a person who is responsible for the collection, either in a museum or an art gallery. Val, could you please explain, as someone who's been to UCT and is studying curatorship, what exactly your understanding of curatorship is?
Well, I must say that I don't feel that I represent what the academy, like the proper academy, or UCT think of curatorship. I actually felt like I was the outsider there, so I cannot represent their point of view. My view on curatorship is that it can include anything. It's not only exhibition making, it's not only working with artists, and it's not only fine art museums. It can be any creative action that involves using the talents of other people and organizing them to mean something. And this something can be various things. That's my perception.
At the beginning of the evening, we gave you a couple of booklets to look at, and one of them is Valerie's thesis, which is here. Please feel free to take a look at it. We can, I don't know, do you want us to pass it around? We can pass it around. Val, could you elaborate more on, like I said, this is her thesis, and people, when they write thesis, it's always a long, very formalized document. What was the inspiration behind that?
I really felt that one of the problems with art is that it does not fulfill its potential in society because it's closed in very certain small circles of people who are privileged enough and are curious enough to appreciate it. People who go to galleries, to museums, who got art education at schools where they attended. It's many people who are born into those opportunities. And I think that art has a bigger potential to fulfill in society, not only for like entertainment or extra elitist activity, but actually something that can provide solutions to everyday problems that we are facing as persons and as a society. So because of that, I don't feel that it needs to be written about in specific terminology and in higher
Yes.
language, but in a familiar language, and it can be still intelligent and interesting and serious and simply written. And also English is not my first language and I couldn't write too seriously.
Yeah. Kaya, can you just elaborate more on you as an artist and what you've experienced since you started art, and how does your work, who curates your work, and how do you choose the galleries in which your work is displayed?
Okay. My first body of work couldn't find acceptance in terms of it was sort of like a view that I had, which I thought it would substantiate to art in my own interpretation. But through a process of knocking from door to door, trying to get someone interested, I got to come across one term. When the galleries are looking at your work, they will tell you either you have a voice or you don't. And that kind of thing, I mean, it got me to inquire more about the people that I've seen doing art, and to actually try and discover what is the voice within the work that I had. And the first breakthrough that I had was because someone else had taken me around to see the work and to actually get a feel of what makes it as art in terms of what the galleries are expecting from artists. And so I made a few changes in my work, but the message and the stories sort of they were not my language, but there were still things that I wanted to talk about, issues that I felt like they were relevant. And so I remember Charles, the first thing that he told me that he wants something edgy, something that is almost not predictable, something that, well, if you're looking, for instance, at the basic term of what is township art, it's sort of squeezed into township scenes.
Yeah.
You know.
That brings me to my next question, and I want to get both your opinions and maybe the opinions of everybody else here today who has any clue on art and curatorship. Curators, like you say, have terms for or genres of art, like there's modern art and township art and whatever art. Do you feel that those terms are still relevant this day and age, or do they just limit the artist's range?
Well, because you don't know where the terms originate from, it's sort of like the language that is used in the industry, or rather in the field. But when you go to the studios where people work and where people put their stuff together, they don't necessarily put a term on what they're working on. But then if you're taking it to another level where someone else is gonna display it in their space, then there is a term there. Okay. So in response to the question whether is it relevant or not, I think anybody who comes from where I come from, their stories and everything that they have to talk about is inspired by the place where they come from and the things they had encountered. But at the same time, the realist side of a person is always reflects where they did their growing up and everything. And so in a way, my art is urban art, but it is a reflection of township.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I could say, all right, you're not gonna see shacks and everything, but the story is a story that will tell you more about the township. Yeah. So in a way, it's confusing because if I take it to the gallery, it doesn't appeal as township art. Yeah.
Valerie, as a curator, can you comment on this? These terms that are...
I actually feel that they represent this institutionalized perception of art and of curatorship, which I find not interesting to work in, and I don't feel that this is where art exists the most. So it's a bunch of professionals who are a very small group in society who has their terms, and they talk about it in their parties and in their spaces with their people, with their magazines, and it's fine. It's good to have, it's a community, and it's great. It's like this community. I'm not opposing to it, but I think that what you are talking about is your need as an artist to express something, and this expression happens to be in the gallery because this is where you can pay your bills from, but actually in an ideal world where you don't need to pay your bills, then maybe you would do other things with your need to express yourself, and maybe your art would address other audiences than the people can afford to buy your art. I don't know what you're feeling about it.
I think that is very true, because one of the things is that whenever I would do something, it's always like inspired by something, and to a certain extent you cannot say everything that you want to say, because you are sensitive to the people that are interested in your art. So
it's a kind of self-censorship in a way.
Exactly, because every time, if I would do a painting, I've made it my practice that I should write about it, so that even if the gallerist doesn't know what it's about, but he has the tools to market it and maybe say something relevant to people interested. Yeah.
So, how do you feel for an artist, somebody who's starting up, how do you feel they should go about approaching galleries who are going to represent their work as close to how they really feel about it as possible, without it being altered or put into a bracket which you or as the artist wouldn't want it to be in?
I don't know, I feel uncomfortable that art should be evaluated in terms of who buys it, because then it's really a matter of how you market a commodity, and like every product that you market, you need to sell it and to wrap it nicely and like to tell the buyers what they want to hear, so you can sell it if you. But that's actually the frustration about art, I think. That your motivation is not to sell, it's to do other things. But you need to sell, and somewhere in the middle you need to find yourself. That's how I think.
From my side, I think it's essential for a person who has an intention to grow, to learn as much as they can, whether by interacting with other artists or by interacting with people like that represent the institutions and so on. Because one of the things is that the more you're trying to push like this door to open, it might be that the thing that you want to bring into the field is bigger than what you're trying to squeeze it into. But then the more you get to sort of like come across these things, the more you twist, and your mind is working faster and is trying to do bigger things. Because at the end of the day, even if you sell your work, but you want to be proud of what you've done. You want to if somebody like has your piece in their house, you want them to feel like they bought art. Even though you may be doing it like to pay your bills, but at the end of the day, sometimes you wish you could get some stuff back and remake it, because if it's about selling now, later on it's not gonna be about selling, and you're gonna want to see your work like representing you in full. So that's what it's about.
Would you like to ask a question?
I just had a comment.
Oh, yes, yes.
I just had a comment because I think, in a sense, the conversation is going, around, and kind of conflicting, right? Because I hear in some sense that, you're talking about the need for an audience for the work, right? And how to acquire that audience. And sometimes that's for self-expression, like you've mentioned. Sometimes it's actually for a larger intervention in society, which you've mentioned. Sometimes it's actually to get paid. New York and its market, if you will, marketing of art and accessibility is that there's a huge diversity of where that can be accessed. You can go to a place like the Metropolitan or the Guggenheim, which is incredibly formalized, very kind of, you know, institutionalized, you could say like colonial in a sense, right? But then you could also go to the many places in what was the meatpacking district, right? Which and other places in Brooklyn, or there are places outside of somehow those centers, but their own centers of art. And so I guess my point is that a lot of different art is accessible. You know, we even have a huge museum that's dedicated to graffiti, you know, that would probably be as big as, you know, 2 of the blocks on Lower Main. I mean, it's quite massive and, you know, maybe 10 stories, right? So we have huge spaces. So in that sense, I think that there is, and they're affordable to go to, right? Most of our museums are free, you know, by donation. Of course, they don't tell you that. You have to, you know, recognize it in the fine print or the big print, whatever. But, so in that way, I think it's helpful to give people a tangible experience of what the diversity of what art could be. But then at the same time, of course, there's huge amounts of exclusion, right? Of what gets into any of those spaces. And if you look at the galleries in Soho, and I mean, I'm, you know, probably like from the 90s into the early 2000s, it was very hard to get any sort of, you know, very critical social messages into those galleries. There was only one that I knew of, the Puffin Room.
And where is that?
In Soho, I'm talking about. Okay. So like kind of the up and coming historic area for modern art.
I don't know if you're looking at it from an African context, where, you know, things here, especially here in South Africa, you know, it being a new democracy and things being still a little bit more colonialized than places like America. I think maybe the demographics and the situation generally of how curatorship works and with art here in Africa would be a little bit more behind them.
Different.
Yeah. I don't know what you guys have to. Yes.
Just to say that when you asked if the terminology that's used is still relevant, I honestly feel that the question should be if it's appropriate, especially when we're talking, because especially now you're going and looking at it from specifically an African context. And when we're talking about terminologies and definitions of what constitutes art, and when he mentioned the issue of there's a question of whether it has a voice or if it doesn't have a voice. Who's determining what defines a voice? And also when we're talking about curatorship, are we looking at the spiritual aspect of African art? Because art in Africa wasn't just for aesthetic beauty. It's never been about aesthetic beauty. Whether it's a mosque, whether it's the Dinka symbols in Ghana, whatever it is, whether it's the hieroglyphics, it's not just art, it's not just communication, it's a spiritual, it's a very cultural thing, of which when you're talking art in contemporary Africa, whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Zimbabwe, whether you're in any West African country or East African country, it's very, very, very inaccessible for the owners of the art, except for the artists themselves. And even for the artists themselves, their voice is defined within a language that does not belong to them, which is totally removed from the point and the purpose of these things. So I'm just wondering, when we're looking at curatorship, when we're looking at art within the African context, I can't speak about or speak to any other context, but I can only speak to the context where I originate. And I'm talking about looking at, for instance, when you're even talking of discussing Picasso, do we actually acknowledge the origins or the inspirations of Picasso's Cubism, for instance? Do we actually pay reverence to these things? Do we actually acknowledge the fact that these things have been totally yanked out of the hands of the owners and the creators and the intended beneficiaries of these works? So that's just a question that's just, I'm throwing out into the room, but
No, these are
specifically to
really
you.
relevant points. But I think that one should look at art in a wider sense than visual arts, sculptures and paintings. Poetry is also art, and that's a very good example for contemporary Africa, especially South Africa. And from what I know as a foreigner here, but I heard about the resistance movement and the role that poetry played in all these situations. So there are many contemporary and interventions. Also, it's something that in Cape Town specifically is very much happening. So maybe none of us can afford to buy oil painting, but there are many different kinds of art. In a way, when you style your hair, it's art. You know, you can approach it very widely when you do a community organization that collects, I don't know, food for a neighbor who doesn't have one. Maybe it's also a creative solution to something that can classify as art. I would suggest looking at it very broadly.
As an artist who was born and bred in Africa, and you have your stuff exhibited different parts of South Africa and also the world. What do you think about how art has been curated? I mean, in an African context. Now, do you feel it's a true representation of, what should be exhibited in African galleries, or do you think it's still very colonial?
In my view, I think it's still very colonial in a sense that when we come together as artists and you get to be exposed to other artists' work, as an artist you can recognize what is art. But the thing of taking art into like galleries is an intention to sell, to sell. There's nothing else that you expect from them. So, I mean, if that's what it is, then it means that as soon as it's out of your space, your studio or wherever, then it becomes a commodity more than it just becomes an art piece. And to be quite honest, a person who will tell you that you don't have a voice is because they don't see the inspiration to sell it. They don't see where they could sell it to. Because if somebody feels like this is art, they're convinced, then they know that they can be ambassador to someone else. But if they still feel uncertain about the piece, they will tell you to bring something else.
And on the topic of inspiration, what is the most inspiring project that you have worked on as an artist, and also you as a curator, if there is one?
The funny thing is that how I work, now that you guys have brought it up, I feel like you, as an artist, who wants to sell, whereas who lives off like what they do, it somehow feels like slavery. Because everything that I do, it ends up at someone else's hands. And it not that it doesn't bring me joy, but now that you brought it up, it somehow feels like I spend so much time doing whatever I do, and then I never get to see where it goes or who appreciates it or where it ends up at. I just hear from people that, hey, we saw your work here and there, but I think it's sort of like a cut off my rather, what is the word? The connection.
Yeah.
As soon as it's gone, then I have to like give birth to another baby, and then that one is gone, and then I have to give birth to. There's no continuity in terms of, okay, I've done this, and now I'm doing that, but it's like everything must go.
And you don't even choose the adopting parents.
Exactly. You know what I mean?
Losing your baby.
Well, I'm not feeling sad about it, but it just highlights like a certain realization that, damn, I need to work faster so that I can get where I can like just keep my pieces, because sometimes you're working with something that you really love, like an idea, a concept that you really love, and to know that it's gonna be priced, to know that it's gonna have like a price tag and it's gonna be bought and you're not gonna see it again. Sometimes I feel like you could just buy it back or something.
But each time you start a new project, after that feeling of, you know, having lost it to something else, is the love always there for every project?
Yeah, because I think when your mind, like when you have something in your heart that you really want to say, until you find the language and it just lands on you like that. Like for me, it just happens. It just happens like lightning, and then I'll be working on something else, and then something else hits me,
Yeah.
and then I'll be so happy that I'm gonna do this. I'll tell my friends about a new one, like, oh, you know. And then when it's done, then I have to find something else to be excited about. But coming back to like exciting projects, I think it's not necessarily like the things that I've done for maybe like exhibitions and stuff, but the whole thing of being able to do what you love doing at your own space, I think that on its own is a very exciting project.
Wow, wow. And you, Valerie? Inspiring projects that you have done as
I don't know,
a
I'm
curator.
trying, I really started curatorship recently, and I did it because I decided I want to enjoy what I'm working for.
Yeah.
So I'm really trying every project that I take, if it was a school assignment or other things, I really just enjoy it, to really have pleasure of doing it, and all the other things will just come along. So I really am privileged to say that I'm inspired by anything I'm doing.
Okay.
Here's another point. Like early this year, I mean last year, I think around February, I worked with on an outreach project. That's always exciting. I mean, working with kids and people that aspire to be artists and that would just see what you do. What I mean.
Yeah.
So we worked at Joe Slovo, the one in Millerton. We did like a huge stencil of Joe Slovo. Apparently, when you say Joe Slovo to the township, like children, it sounds like a name of a black guy. So I was asking like these school kids, what color do you think Joe Slovo is? And everybody was giving me like all different things. And then I got to bring a picture of Joe Slovo and I was asking them, do you know this person? And nobody knew who he was. And I told them that this is Joe Slovo. So we started this like 3 meters by 3 meter, like huge stencil at a taxi rank. And we started like from nothing, and I showed them how to cut, and we did the spray painting and all of that. But
and where is it? It's
in Millerton, yeah.
Okay.
It's in Millerton, just as you come from or go towards Century City, yeah. And I did another project like with the museum in Howard Bay. It was sort of like the same feel. It was a school holiday, so they organized like these girls that play netball to come like and work with me, and the girls didn't show up. But then when the kids saw me like using spray and cutting stuff, they just came on their own accord, and then they ended up like being there every day. So that, I think, one of the things is that when you know that you just, you know, I don't know when exactly do you know, but as soon as people start getting excited and they want to learn and they want to ask you, and you just see children like behaving in the natural, like you know, if you go to class, people always reserve themselves. If you say this is a workshop, people are going to act like they know this and that. But when you get to a situation where like a person would be attracted by an image and they want to learn, they want to see what you're doing, and they're standing there, and then until you say to them you want to spray, and then you give them the spray,
It's very
and then
organic.
you get to see like that childish like nature, you know, that childish joy that's not filtered. It's like the experience is so wonderful for kids. So that for me it brings so much joy.
Thank you.
So ideally, this is the kind of work that you would rather focus on if you didn't have to pay your bills.
Yeah, if you didn't have to.
You know, it's funny. I like doing what I'm doing. There's so much that a person can do inside, and there's other stuff that you can do outside. So it helps to be able to be like another person outside, but still be able to come back and be able to sit by yourself and do stuff.
Alright.
Yeah, I understand.
Guys, this is a conversation that, you know, we could go on and on about curatorship in an African context, European context, and you know, there's no real way of answering whether or not, you know, curatorship is really needed. But I think at the end of the day, the important lesson is that, you know, art is a feeling, and it's everywhere, and it can be expressed in different ways. Like Valerie has written her thesis here, and how Kaya has exhibited work in Africa and Europe. You guys must please feel free to take a look at the visual content here, and you can have a conversation with our two guest speakers. I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions. If not, then I'd like to thank the both of you for coming to share with us today, and for everybody for staying and having their input. Can we please give them a round of applause? Okay, thank you. Hey guys, I don't know if you guys have seen those. No, okay. Which I'd love you guys to all take a look at. We have posted pictures there, and there are videos of the past weeks that you guys have missed, so please go check it out. And there's more stuff to come, so yeah, we'd love to see you guys again. Thank you. Thank you. This was nice.
Yeah.
We'll go play music.